Alright. I'm gonna miss you, Auntie. Alright. And you're gonna take her?
Yes, I'm gonna drive her and it's time to go, so.
Can I say
Signing
goodbye
off.
to you?
Alright. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye, dear. And have a good day, and I'll keep you in my prayer for your study, okay?
Alright, let's teach you some sociocultural. Describe describe the role of situational and dispositional factors in explaining behavior. So first, you're going to want to establish what the attribution theory is. Attributions can be used to distance oneself from failure. For example, if a sports team loses, that represents your country or state or anything. You would say they lost rather than our team lost or we lost. Basically, understanding attribution theory can be important when challenging one's own biases or when trying to understand the dynamics of a group. Now, situational and dispositional factors. Situational are factors that are environmental, basically, and dispositional factors that you can only blame on yourself. Alright, now, Campbell and Sedekis in 1999 did the self-serving bias study, and what they did was they had a student take an examination, and if the student does well on the test, then he or she is more likely to believe that it is his or her own ability to succeed. For example, it was like, oh, I passed it because I'm smart. This all dispositional factors. I passed it because I'm smart. I studied a lot for it. I got a lot of sleep last night. However, if they receive a poor grade, they'll be like, oh, the lighting was dim. Oh, I didn't get enough sleep. Oh, the test was really hard. I didn't understand it, etc., etc. They'll find other things to blame. And that's all you really want to talk about. Next question. Define the terms culture and cultural norms. Really, really simple. Just talk about what culture is and what cultural norms are. Try to relate to cultures such as your own, or just cultures that you know, basically. Now, culture is shared, learned, symbolic system of values, beliefs, and attitudes that shape and influence the people's behavior. It's a shared system of beliefs, values, customs, behaviors, and artifacts. Ignore that. What the hell? I never noticed that. Alright, culture, all the things that make up a person's entire way of life, basically. Alright. And then cultural norms. Cultural norms are patterns of behavior typical of a specific group, normally passed down from generation to generation via observational learning. They can be taught at such as traditions like wedding traditions, like Western Eastern weddings, rites of passage in certain tribes, and ways of raising children, etc., etc. Moving on. Explain the formation of stereotypes and their effect on behavior. For this, you're going to want to mention Steele and Aronson's 1995 study on the stereotype threat. Now, what happened was basically, yes, okay, I'm making sure that this was the correct study. 1995, Steele and Aronson studied two groups of people, African Americans and European Americans. Now, they were both groups were assigned to take a test. The African Americans were told that the first test would be a verbal test. The spotlight anxiety took over and basically caused the African Americans to fall into the stereotype threat and succumb to the average stereotype that African Americans aren't as good as European Americans on verbal tests. And this caused them to score poorly on said test because of spotlight anxiety. The second test was a general knowledge of basic general knowledge slash general skills, right? And the African Americans did just as well, or even better, than the European American students. And yeah, this shows that spotlight anxiety can take over at random times when a group is faced with a certain specific task, or etc., and basically causes them to fall into the stereotype of whatever culture. Next question, using one or more examples, explain emic and etic. Now, emic relates to how a culture is viewed from the inside, and etic is how a culture is viewed from the outside. There are some studies for this. Mead, 1935, lived for 2 years among 3 different types of tribes peoples of New Guinea, and studied how their societies produce differences of temperament, that is, differences in innate individual qualities. Bendick, 1934, conducted field work among some of the Pueblos Indians of New Mexico. Yeah, etc., etc. And basically, you just want to mention studies about people in certain cultures and outside of certain cultures viewing said culture. How much time? 6 minutes. All right. Explain the social learning theory, making reference to 2 relevant studies. I'm going to want to talk about Bandura et al. 1961, about the Bobo doll study. What Bandura did was he had 2 groups, and there was a doll, sort of like a punching doll. Like you would punch the doll, it would fall over, come back up. Right? And 2 different groups with children in the rooms. One group had an adult walk in and yell and beat the Bobo doll and then just walk out. The other group had no adult, just the kids and the Bobo doll. What was found was that the kids with the Bobo doll didn't really do much with the Bobo doll. They just kind of left it there, or if there was any interaction, it wasn't very violent. However, the other group mimicked the adults and attacked the Bobo doll. This is kind of like monkey see, monkey do. The second study you're going to want to reference would be Huseman and Aaron in 1986. They did a similar study, and yeah, longitudinal. Yeah, basically they talked about aggression and how TV violence affects the development of children. They said that aggression is in early adulthood is related to the amount of violence watched in middle childhood, although it is not related to the amount watched in early adulthood. It has been proposed that there is a sensitive period between the ages of 8 and 12, during which children are particularly susceptible to the influence of television violence. Alright, the next question is discuss 2 errors and attributions. For this, you're going to want to talk about fundamental attribution error and the self-serving bias. Self-serving bias we've already talked about, where it's Gamble and Sedekie's 1999 study of students that take examinations. So, after already touching on that, we'll move on to fundamental attribution error. Fundamental attribution error. Jones and Harris, 1967, had the participants read 2 different essays. One was pro Fidel Castro and one was against Fidel Castro. Now, the people that read the pro Fidel Castro assumed that the people who wrote it had a more positive attitude towards Castro, even though they were told that the writers did not have a choice and that it was just up to a coin flip toss. Like, they flipped the coin and side that got tails had to write positive, heads negative. Basically like that. And yeah, the readers still rank them, the writers that wrote pro Castro, as having a much better attitude towards him than those that wrote against him. That's what you're really going to want to talk about. That's just the study. And that's about it, really. Also, explain what fundamental attribution error is. It's a common type of cognitive bias in social psychology. Essentially, the fundamental attribution error involves placing a heavy emphasis on internal personality characteristics to explain someone's behavior in a given situation. Alright, next question really quick. Evaluate social identity theory, making reference to relevant research studies. Talk about... I can't pronounce his name, no matter how many times. Cialdini et al. 1976 found that college football supporters were more likely to represent their school or their college when they were winning rather than they were losing, obviously. So basically, when the school was winning more, there was a lot more pride and spirit, wearing the school colors happening. Whereas if the school had lost a lot of games, there would barely be any support or spirit for the school. Basically, it's kind of like morale. Right, moving on. How much time? Okay, alright. Moving on. Evaluate research on conformity to group norms. Now, I'm going to want to talk about Ash, the Ash experiment in 1951, where he used the line judgment experiment, and one participant was in a room with 7 Confederates. The experimenter would have these Confederates conform 66% of the time to say a wrong answer. They would all unanimously say a wrong answer, and the results were that about 1/3 of the time of that 66%, the participants who were placed, the one participant who was placed among the Confederates would conform. So for example, if the Confederates chose D out of A, B, C, D in a multiple choice question, then 32% of that time, the participant would choose D. Alright, Crutchfield, 1955, thought that Ash's experiment only worked because the participants could see and hear the other Confederates. So what he did was he got a bunch of different participants, all from different backgrounds, and he had them and the Confederates stay in different booths, and they were basically, they could not see or hear each other, and there was like a buzzer or some sort of button that would be pushed to answer a question. And there was a larger variety of questions asked as well to make it much more applicable to real life. On factual questions, the 30% of the participants would conform to the wrong answer, and for opinion questions, this number was even higher. You don't have to, but you can mention Perrin and Spencer's experiment in 1980, where they basically replicated Ash's study and used different questions, and they had to filter the sample as many had already heard of Ash's studies before. And what was found was that genuine subjects, which were like scientists and really well-educated people, only conformed once out of the 396 trials. Alright, that's about it really. And yeah, sociocultural stuff. Fun.